Okay, so on this deck profile, we'll be going over another Overlord list. I know I've been doing quite a bit of those, and then we'll be doing other ruler decks in the future as well. But this one is for an Overlord for a Restand. Again, similar to one of the other ones I've done earlier, but this one focuses more on Atlas. And again, this is mostly just a fun deck. It may not be as competitive because it sometimes while playing it doesn't hit as hard. And it also requires you to get lucky and your opponent doesn't hit specific counters, that will like stop your attacks. But we'll get into it. So first we have two mistwyrm Clock Tower Dragon. So again, this card is very good for allowing you to restand your ruler or other units. This one is not a big use of this card in this deck because the main attacker is going to be one of our level 2s for BigWig that you can see in the title. But then we still have two mistwyrms because again it's just a very good for keeping our attacks up if we do not have our big owls. Next we have Van Rain. This is one of our legends. And again, this is just good because it's a double attacker. It does use both of our summoning caps, but again, not too much of an issue. Next we have is our main attacker. So this is BigWig bloodrage raptor. So for this one, it has breakthrough. So meaning that if it attacks a unit in the center slot and destroys it, it still does its one strike to the opponent. It also has retaliate, meaning if your opponent attacks it and then it survives, it will deal damage. It'll do its attack back to that unit. And then it also has when it attacks, you can discard one card, and if you do, you can ready it. It's also not a once per turn effect, so you can do it as many times as you discard cards. So it's essentially functions the same as like double attack. It also has the enhance, has charge shield as well as enhance for Zoo Brigade, which most of our deck is. So you could enhance it over another unit so that we can keep attacking, and then it can also be used defensively if you need. But because this card does require a lot of cards to go through because you have to keep discarding, we run 4 Colonel BigWig Owl. So this card can help us draw if we use it, if we actually draw it, or if not, if you get hit for the counter, it helps us draw cards. As well as 4 Mortanas. So again, using it for its draw ability, for its CNT. But then we don't really take use of its actual DR ability because we are playing Overlord, so no matter what events we play, it'll always cost 1. But then this will synergize with the next card we'll talk about as well. So next we run 4 Shioris. We do run some familiars in the deck that we'll go over a little later, but Shiori can also be used with Mortana to actually get a mistwyrm because we'll hit level 4 for that. But the Shiori is actually mostly to Genesis summon for BigWig Owl, who's also a warrior. So it's another Genesis summon target since that is the main focus of this deck is to use the BigWig Owl. But again, this can also be used to get out like a Van Rain or another mistwyrm if we do need it. Next we have 4 Cat Sith and Boots. So you can use it for his giant killing for some drive decks that still might be floating around. But it is a familiar that can again become a level 2 that Shiori can revive, and again you can go into a mistwyrm. Or again, it is mostly to go into big owls. We also have 4 Dark Knight Vamels. So this is mostly a defensive card for its DR ability. We are drawing through a lot of our deck. So sometimes this will end up in our hand. We can use it as a defense, to reduce the damage that we're taking by 2 by using DR2. Because the deck doesn't use as much DR as like other decks. Lastly, we have 1 Paula. Again, because of the Overlord, because the deck count is 60. Sometimes you get some uneven numbers when you run like 4s and then 1 3. So sometimes the legend throws off the number count a little bit. But we're running 1 Paula because again, with any of the like familiars, we can make like a level 2 at least to go into BigWig Owl. Or if we do hit into like this Cat Sith, we can go into other ones. It also lets us discard our familiars for Shiori. That way we can bring them back with her and then get a Genesis summon out of it. We have 4 specialist bullseye wolf, so it's a Zoo Brigade. And again, when it comes into play, you can either deal one enemy 1 damage, or you can deal your opponent 1 damage. So we're mostly using it to deal our opponent 1 damage, because it's kind of potentially hits like a counter early, so that way we can, you know, go around it, like if it's like a rest counter, and then we can move around our units to restand them. We also have 4 helldiver, so this is another zoo brigade that you could DR 3 zoo brigades, and then you can look at your opponent's hand and discard a card, so similar to like Thoughtseize, or like other cards from other card games where, you know, you get to look at your opponent's hand and you get to choose a card to discard. So this can help protect you from cards like Lucifer, you know, when they try to like board wipe your field. You can do that like ahead of time. But a lot of these cards, so like these zeros, are actually mostly discard fodder for BigWig Owl, because again, you know, they're not as high use as the owl itself. Next we have 4 specialist demolisher salamander, so again another zoo brigade. And then normally you don't usually use this, but if you do, you can attack with it, and then if your opponent doesn't use the ability of any of their set cards, you can actually pay 1 resource and then destroy one of their set cards. Since, you know, resource is not usually you'll have like 1 resource left over with Overlord, since you usually have 2 summons, and then we don't have as many events in this deck as like other builds would have. We have 2 recon bucks. Again, you can look at the top part of your deck to see what's coming, or you can put it at the bottom. Like if you want to set up, you know, like a counter for your next turn, you can use that for that purpose. But again, it's another zoo brigade that we can DR for helldiver, or if not, again, you can just use it to discard for BigWig Owl. We also have 4 ragdoll cat sits. So again, this is mostly for the Genesis summoning for Shiori. And again, it can be used defensively if you hit it like off of a counter and place in your defense zone, because then your opponent wastes one of their attacks. But again, if these end up getting stuck in your hand, again, BigWig Owl is we're making use of his effect to discard cards that aren't very useful to summon. So that's why a lot of the level 0s are usually they're not as useful later on in the game as the game goes longer. So they can be just used to pitching for BigWig Owl. And lastly, we have 4 astromancy. So in Overlord, it's literally pay 1 resource, draw 2 cards. Again, just trying to fill our hands with different options, and then again using BigWig Owl to try to go in and attack. And then with a lot of rulers today being, you know, like with Overlord, you know, a lot of rulers have like low HP, so 11 or even 10 if you run into wizards. So sometimes the chip damage with BigWig Owl can actually get you there. And then, you know, you can also use cards like mistwyrm or even like vamel to continue attacking, as well as trying to draw through your deck with like BigWig Owls, and try to protect yourself with like vamels. But that's all for this deck list. And again, the deck list will be, or the deck profile and the deck list for this deck will be in the description below again, in case it was harder to see the different cards, or try to get down the different names, so you can see the breakdown there. And then again, if you have any questions like of how the deck functions, or if there's like specific cards you want to see, like for decks that's centered around specific cards, you can always post in the comment section below, and then I'll do my best to try to make deck profiles of those type of decks that other people would like to see as well. Okay, so thank you for watching, and then I'll see you guys in the next one.